Hi, everybody. It's Karen Anderson here with Aortic Hope, and we are here tonight with a live event with Barbara Mountain, who is the National Director of Business Development with Doherty Cella Keane. These are a nationwide law firm that specializes in disability and really teaching everybody how to navigate the disability process. But before we get started, I am going to ask you to please click that like button, click the subscribe button, and click the bell so that you're notified every time we go live. Because we don't just go live for these live events. We also go live on our Monday weekend reviews. We have very brave survivors who do their Survivor Series live, but this one's really exciting and important. And you can always leave your comments below in the comments section and ask a question. There should be a link up as well in case you'd like to ask an anonymous question, and we will be able to do that for you, but we're going to hold off on questions for right now. I think I might be able to address them all for you because I've been paying attention to what's been going on in Facebook. And disability is a hot topic, Barbara. So before we jump right into this, I'd love for you to take a moment and introduce yourself and introduce the firm.
Great. Hi, thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me. And hello, everybody. My name is Barbara Mountain, as she said, and I am the National Director of Business Development with Doherty Cella Keane. So Doherty Cella Keane, we are a law firm, and all we do is specialize in Social Security disability law. So my background is I've spent my whole life basically working with Social Security disability. When I graduated from college, I worked for the Social Security Administration. I was a social insurance specialist, which means an expert in Social Security law and Supplemental Security Income law. I did that for 7 years. Then I went to the insurance world and I worked with Liberty Mutual, where I managed their Social Security advocacy program. So Liberty Mutual wanted people who are on long-term disability benefits to get on Social Security, and I would help facilitate that. Then I went to Doherty Cella Keane, where I've been now for over 12 years, where I help our attorneys and our office in terms of all the Social Security technical information. I'm also out in the community doing discussions on Social Security, such as we're doing today. Pretty strong background in the technical aspects of it. And here to answer all of your questions about it, and hopefully make you feel at ease a little more about what Social Security disability is, and if it's something that you should pursue, how you go about that, and what the process looks like. And I know that there's an opportunity for you to ask questions, so feel free to use this to ask those questions that you haven't been able to find an answer for online, or maybe somebody's told you the answer and you want to make sure it's right. I will say there's a lot of misinformation out there about Social Security, so it is important that you get correct information in terms of when to file or not.
I agree with you. There's a lot of positive and negative misinformation. It goes both ways when it comes to disability. And before we get started in the process, I know one of the things that they ask is, can you get disability for just having an aneurysm? Or do you need to have had a dissection? And I don't think that it's just cut and dry. So maybe you can explain a little bit about what would initiate somebody to think the various causes to initiate stepping into that disability process.
Really, Social Security disability is a program that's designed to pay benefits to an individual who has a disability that prevents them from being able to work. So everything goes back to that whole work factor, because the way you pay for Social Security disability is through work. It's your FICA taxes. So when you're working, you're paying FICA. Those are your premiums for this insurance. In the event you become disabled, you've paid insurance, just like life insurance. You paid into it, and now you're saying you can't work. So really what you're doing is you're proving to Social Security, or your Social Security needs to determine based on your medical that you don't have that ability to work. So what does it mean in terms of what do you have to have? Well, it could be anything. It could be any type of disability. So it really comes down to the specifics, and it's not just the medical information. It also comes down to how old are you and what is your education level? What skills do you have? What skills do you still have? Because you may have had a whole lot of skills, but you can't do those anymore. What do you have right now? So it's really not just like, oh, this, and this. It's let's look at you in totality. Let's look at what your work experience is. Let's look at your education level, and let's look how your disability is now impacting that. And that's what we would do, is that we would go over all of your medical factors with you. We'd get all of your medical records. We would put it together to present to Social Security that, yes, this person is unable to perform what Social Security calls substantial gainful activity, and because of their disability, and then Social Security has to approve the case. So it really, it's more broad than just this, and this. It's just, okay, maybe you're tired all the time. Maybe you can't stand for, too much time. Maybe, there's so many different factors that go into it that we really look at each person individually and what their medical says. But if, you know that you can't work, well, then it's time for you to go and see if maybe you can receive Social Security disability benefits, because that's what it's there for.
So, and I would think if you're somebody, let's just start with an aneurysm. So, and what people need to understand is since we've been working together, which I really pursued this relationship after utilizing your firm for myself. And the
Hmm.
reason I came upon your firm is because I went on to short term disability after my dissection 8 years ago. And then my employer, we had to move me to long term. And then they introduced me to your firm. So that's kind of how it happened from the back end of the employer. But let's say somebody is diagnosed with an aneurysm. So now they're in a more labor intensive position that requires lifting 50 pounds. It requires straining. It requires a couple things that now by their doctor, they're being told they can't do. So I would think that would then qualify them if that's really the only work. That's what they've been doing.
Hmm.
Now they can't do it. That would qualify them to be in a situation where they should reach out to your firm.
Right. They should definitely look into it. And as Social Security will say, well, can you do sedentary work? Do you have the skills to do sedentary work? If you do, then that would be a reason why they would say you would not be eligible. But if this person maybe, it's only done manual labor, really doesn't have those skills, then it really depends on age. Social Security, interestingly, considers you advanced age when you're over 50. So 50 and older, if you don't already have the skill, they don't expect you to learn it. If you're under
Okay.
50, though, they do expect you to have the ability to learn the job. So really, there's a big difference once you hit 50 in terms it's much easier actually to get on Social Security than it is when you're under 50. So age really does play a pretty big factor, as well as education. The more education you have, the more transferable skills you have, the more likelihood that you have that sedentary capacity if you couldn't do something more at a medium or heavy occupation.
Okay, so regardless if it's dissection or it's aneurysm, whatever the case may be, you find yourself in a position that you can no longer perform the functions of your job. And whether somebody is introduced to you because of their employer or they just pick up the phone and call, can you
Mhm.
walk us through the steps of what it
Right.
takes to go
Yeah.
through this
All right.
extremely daunting
Yeah.
process? And I mean daunting from the point of paperwork. I mean,
Hmm.
paperwork stresses a lot of people out in this community. So as you go through these steps, I might raise my hand just to jump in with a
Yeah.
question because I'll forget my question because as you know, my memory is pretty short now from all of this. So take us through these steps of what we can do to begin this process of getting into disability.
Sure. All right. So how you file. So Social Security actually used to be even more user friendly than it is today. Now they are pushing you to go out and file online, saying just go do it online. It's so easy. It's actually really not that easy. The questions aren't always really obvious how to answer them. You don't necessarily know all the different forms you have to complete. It really can be overwhelming. It's just not straightforward the way it should be. So what would happen is the first thing that you would do if you're filing is you would file your initial application. And that's where you asked general questions, marriage questions, are you working, your date of onset, that sort of information. They're looking to see also like marriage questions are to see if you have a spouse that could potentially be eligible on your record. Do you have children under the age of 18? Some kind of basic information. Then you're going to complete a disability report. And that's where you're going to list all of your doctors and hospitals and everywhere that you would go to get medical information about you. Now, Social Security is going to say, we will get the medical records for you. Just sign these, what's referred to as an 827, it's the number of the form. That's an authorization for them to go out and get the medical for you. Now, that sounds all great. The problem is Social Security is not really good at getting medical records. They'll send all the forms, but they don't have the manpower to continually follow up to make sure they get them. So a lot of people that file on their own end up getting denied because Social Security didn't have complete medical. They eventually just go with whatever they've got. So if you are going to file on your own, probably the biggest and best piece of information I can give you is to get your own medical and submit it yourself, knowing that Social Security then has everything that they need. So if you were to work with a company like mine, or probably any attorney firm out there, I would think they're going to get the medical records, make sure that's a complete file when they submit it. So that is the most important thing. You want Social Security looking at everything and not only looking at little bits of pieces, because obviously all of your medical is going to tell your story, and that's what they need to see.
Again, so real quick. So after I filed, when I had re-examined, and we'll look at that in a minute, I did go around and collect all my medical records. I mean, to go to the trial, I had 836 pages of medical records. And I was told, Karen, you didn't need to do that. Like we're already doing that. So I didn't even realize, because I knew Social Security, not that they purposely dropped the ball. As you said,
Mhm.
there's no manpower. But if someone's working, which again, I highly recommend they
Mhm.
work with attorneys, your firm would go ahead and get all that for me as the client. I don't have to worry. I
Right.
just sign the form
Right.
and you're doing the follow-up calls.
Correct. We're going to make sure that we get all that medical records in. And it is an obligation that we are required to make sure that we're submitting all medical records as well, which is the right thing to do. And of course, we're going to do that, but we also are required to do that. Being attorneys, they're not attorneys and attorneys that do this type of work. As an attorney firm, I can tell you that we would definitely get all of your medical records and make sure that's submitted. So then it goes to, it's submitted to Social Security. Now there's two parts of Social Security. There's Social Security employees that handle the administration of the program that would then take the application, take all the forms and put you into pay or deny your case. But they're not the ones who make the medical decision. The medical decision is made by Disability Determination Services, referred to as DDS. There is a DDS in every state. They're state employees, but they're federally contracted to follow the Social Security law and make the medical decision. They're lay people, so they're not doctors, but they have resources available to them, and they just follow Social Security law. So Social Security gets the application, gets all the forms, packages it all up, sends it to DDS. DDS individual takes it, then looks at all the medical, interprets it based on Social Security law, and do they meet the definition of disability, and then decides the case. If the case is awarded, it goes back to Social Security, and Social Security puts you into pay. If it's denied, you now have an appeal. Now you have 60 days to file an appeal from the date of your denial notice. The first level of appeal is called a reconsideration. You fill out another form, has any new medical records, you submit it. It goes back to DDS. Different person, same role, following the same rules, makes a determination. Majority of cases are denied again here. You don't have a lot of cases overturned at reconsideration level because really they're following the exact same rules. So unless there's some new medical that makes a difference, you're probably not going to see a case awarded at the recon. Denied at the recon, goes back to Social Security. You now have another appeal. You can go to a hearing level. This is the first time you'll actually be able to present a case and be seen by the judge. I used to be able to say seen in person, but you don't have to do in person anymore. You now can do it via video or telephone. We have found it works just as well. We were worried when it first happened. We thought, uh-oh, we're losing that person connection by being in the same room as the judge seeing the individual, but we haven't actually seen any difference in our award rate. So happy to say telephonic or video hearings work just as well. So that's where you really have your best chance of being awarded. Social Security statistics will show you the best chance of being awarded is at the hearing level. So nationally, so this is Social Security statistics. Nationally, they only award about 36% of cases at the initial level. Actually, I think it is 36 right now, 36%, 15% at the recon, only 15, remember, not many there. And then they award about 51% of the cases at the hearing. So your chances of getting awarded actually go up by going through the process. Now, if you were denied at the hearing level, you actually can appeal that case to what's called the Appeals Council. And really what happens there is you're saying the judge, you interpreted the law wrong. So we would have to say there's a reason why you didn't get a fair shot at this. We go to the Appeals Council, they'll look at it. Oftentimes they remand it back to the judge and say, you need to hear this again, you made a mistake. And then the judge will decide again. If you're denied at the Appeals Council level, you actually can eventually go to federal district court where you're suing Social Security saying you didn't follow your own rules. We do take cases to federal district court, not every case, because you have to have merit. We have to be like, no, they're wrong on this one. We know. And then we'll go to federal district court and we get cases awarded. Again, we don't take every case, but we have a pretty hefty practice there because Social Security doesn't always get it right. Now, with cases with, what we're dealing with here, I would think that you're going to get awarded probably at the hearing level for the most part. But depending on the severity of it, it could be as early as the initial level. Now, how long does this process take? Unfortunately, this process is slow. It's always been slow. And Social Security for years and years and years, for the last 30 years, it's always been a delay at the hearing level. You'd get an initial level decision pretty quickly, three months on average, recon 3 months on average, and then the hearing could take a year or 2 years just to get your hearing date. So we're talking 3 years to get that decision. Social Security, when COVID hit, something kind of crazy happened. They managed to get the hearings under control. The hearings are now much, much faster. We're getting hearings within 3 to 9 months, which is something I thought we'd never see. So 3 to 9 months to get that hearing decision. So that's great. But what happened was there's this backlog at the front end. All of a sudden, it became really, really slow at the initial level and the reconsideration level. So we're now seeing initial claims are taking upwards of 9, 12 months. And the reconsideration the same. So we've got this new backlog at the front end, which is another reason if you're thinking about filing for it, file earlier versus later because you want to get in that pipeline because of how long Social Security is taking, which is really, really too bad. But we do the best we can to make sure that we package up your case. Everything is done, all the medical submitted, And then we are on Social Security. We're calling
Mhm.
regularly. We're trying to get moved to the top of the pack to help the people who we represent get a decision faster. And we definitely are going to get a decision faster than filing on your own just because we do that. Squeaky wheels gets the grease. We call them up. We say, hey, you have everything. We know they have everything. And so we just kind of keep saying, what are you looking for? What are you waiting on? Everything's there. And hopefully we move to the top of the pile of whoever has been assigned to that case at DDS to get that decision.
So one of the things, a couple things, here I want to talk about, and just in the spirit of being honest and sharing my personal experience, one of the things, and we talked about this before we went on, that really struck me as being the hardest thing to do. I mean, I was being forced to do this, but number one, I've worked since I was 14 years old. So here I was, age when this happened to me, and I just thought, how can I not be working anymore? So I felt embarrassed. I felt kind of humiliated. I also felt that I couldn't believe I was actually disabled. I mean, I lived with Crohn's disease for so many years, and I know that that qualifies as a disability, and I just functioned with it. So I just didn't have it as far as I was concerned. This struck me as it struck so many people. It strikes so many people. And it's bad enough to have this happen to you, or for anybody with any medical condition, and then to have it right in front of your face that, yeah, no, you're not functioning at a job. And it almost strips this massive identity away. And so to fill out these forms, I mean, I cried for days reading these questions, and oh my God, like, I sound so pathetic. This just sounds so bad. Is it really that bad? And so one of the things you said to me was this, as you said in the beginning, this is like your insurance policy, like your car insurance. You've paid into this, like your life insurance, you're paying into this plan so that when it's needed, you can call and call upon it and say, hey, I need my money. I need some assistance with this. So maybe can you speak a little bit to the emotional aspects of this, and how we can maybe try to look at it differently in order to move forward?
I think a lot of people think of Social Security disability as maybe a needs-based program or even like a welfare type program, which is not what Social Security is. It is purely an insurance program. A lot of people forget that Social Security. So when you are working and that FICA tax is coming out, you are paying for retirement insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, and health insurance through Medicare. So you're actually getting a lot of coverage for that work. I used to go out and do seminars with colleges on Social Security, and I'd ask, how many of you in here have disability insurance? And every college student would say no. And I'd say, how many of you college students have been working summer jobs since you were 16? And everyone would say yes. And I'd say, guess what? You all have disability insurance in the event that you become disabled. The younger you are, the less work you need to have to be eligible for it. It just getting that mindset around it being insurance, and that it's an insurance you never want to use, right? Like life insurance, you pay for it, you hope you never have to use it. It's this protection in case you do. So you have a period of time you can't work, so go get the benefits you're eligible for. And also, it's really important to know it's not a permanent disability program. It can be. It may be, but it doesn't have to be. So by saying that I'm going to go on Social Security disability, what you're saying is I have a disability that's preventing me from working for at least 12 months. I didn't say that earlier. I should have said it. It does have to be a disability expected to last for at least 12 months or result in death. So I'm not going to be able to work for at least a year, but then I hope to get back to work. Well, great. Get Social Security disability for while you're unable to work, and then attempt to go back to work. And Social Security has great work incentives designed to encourage you to go back to work and to help you out with going back to work. So I'm going to jump into those right now because I think you might be interested in that, because there's a lot of people out there that you don't want to think you're saying I can never work. You can go back to work. Social Security wants you to go back to work. They want to be there while you need them, and then they hope that you're eventually able to go back. Now, it took a long time to get on Social Security. You went through, like, maybe it took you 2 years to get on, and lots of paperwork and lots of stress. And now you're thinking, well, wait a minute, I don't want to go back to work because what if I get kicked off? I don't want to go through this process again. So Social Security designed a bunch of work incentives to really give you a pretty long period of time to see if you're successful before you're going to be terminated. So the way it works is once you're awarded Social Security disability, you get 9 months of a trial work period where no matter what you earn, you get your full check. So for 9 months, you could earn $20,000 in a month. You still get your Social Security check. You will not be overpaid. These 9 months don't have to be consecutive. So maybe you work for 6 months and that job just is not working out. You're not feeling great. Maybe you back off it a little bit. A year later, you try again. Oh, well, guess what? You still have 3 more months where you can earn anything you want and you're not going to be overpaid. You're due your Social Security check. So this is your trial. Try it out. See if it's going to work. When you finish that 9th month, the 10th month is going to start a 3-year period of time. Just automatically, you're in this new 3-year period of time called your extended period of eligibility, your EPE. So you go from a TWP to an EPE. Everything's acronyms with Social Security. So during your EPE, any month you earn more than substantial gainful activity, referred to as SGA, is a dollar amount. It changes annually. In the year 2023, that is $1,470.
Wow, that
So
went up
any month you earn
significantly.
more
Yeah.
than $1,470, you're not due your check. So if in a month you earn more than that, no check, not do it.
Right.
Any month you earn under it, you are due it. So for 3 years, you're either in pay or in work suspense. You're not terminated. So if you think about the 9 months plus the 36 months, you basically could be back at work for 4 years before you're going to be potentially terminated. You wouldn't be terminated until the first month after the 36th month, that 3-year period, the first month you were over SGA, then you would be terminated. So really 4 years to attempt it and see how you do before you're at risk of losing those benefits.
So,
Now,
so what you're saying is if we try to go back to work and the stress or the job change, whatever the case is, because we know if we have to take off too much time in the first year anyway, depending on your employer, you probably won't be qualified for FMLA. So even if you go past that first year, which is now the 9 months and the year, I mean, if you lose that job, now does that run consecutively? Is it like the 9 months, or it just is in total? So if I work a year,
the 3 years is consecutive. It is consecutive.
Okay. So if if I work a year and then I need to take a year off because I have to have another surgery, but I try to go back to work again, does my year 1 of 3 begin again, or now I'm starting year 2?
You're starting year 2. So it is still going to be cumulative. So if you worked not 12 months, your first 9 months were your trial work period. Now you're in 3 months of your extended period of eligibility. Then you take another year off. You still have another like 2 year and a half in that time period.
2 years, yeah, right.
Yeah, in that time period of where you'll go right back into pay. So you get that. Now, those 3 years, though, do have to fall, or is it the 9 months? No, the 3 years would go. But what would happen is, so say, for example, you do end up kind of going off and on. The 3 years ends and you go over SGA. Okay, you're terminated. Then something happens and you need to go back on. You go back to file. Social Security will call you what's called an expedited reinstatement of benefits. You will get a new medical decision, but they will start paying you benefits immediately. You can get 6 months worth of checks while they're making the new decision, as long as you allege the same disability and you want to come back on within 5 years of being terminated. So you finally get terminated. Anytime in the next 5 years, you have the same condition, you can come right back on and get checks right away while they make that new medical decision. So a lot of protection in there for you, for a person who wants to go back to work.
This is exactly to the point, because every time I have you on, I learn something new. This speaks exactly to the misnomers of disability. I mean, people have it in their mind that working is a negative, that if I go back to work, I'm going to lose all my money. That's it. And then I'm going to have to start this arduous process all over again if I find out that I can't because the stress is too much and I'm having an aneurysm now that's growing, or I'm struggling. And that's just simply not the case. I mean, it really does sound more and more that the whole process is built to give you your insurance policy. It's better if you call it that. And then, you know, if you go back out, but then you realize, oh God, I really cannot do this. Then even if you've lost, if you're done, your 3 years, 9 months is finished, you can reapply it and you're not going to have to wait 3 more years, you know, to go through this. You're going to get checks right away. And they're going to reevaluate it. As long as it's in the same category, same thing, and it's not a brand new situation, then you probably would just get reapproved. And then just go through this whole thing again if you want. That's so interesting.
So a lot of security for individuals. And so I always try to focus on that, because so many people, you know, the biggest reason why they don't want to file is they really don't want to feel like they're giving up, and that, you know, I'm saying I can't ever go back. And I always say that's absolutely not what you're saying. You're saying I can't work right now. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I need this protection. I would like to file to get, you know, see if I get these checks. And then if I can go back to work, I go back to work. And we have people that we will file for and they end up going back to work inside of a year. No big deal. We'll just withdraw the claim. It's not a problem.
Okay.
They didn't know at the time. They filed early again, so it's not a problem to pull back the claim. Now you have the other individuals who we work with. It's maybe in 18 months, and we don't have a decision yet, and they go back to work. We keep going. And the reason we keep going is because we can get what's called a closed period decision. Once you're out for at least 12 months, this person, we're not now alleging you're still disabled, but are saying you were disabled for this time period and you're entitled to the money for that time period. So as long as you were
Oh,
disabled for more than 12 months, we can get a medical decision, and we're going for a closed period award, not an ongoing award.
okay. So that's interesting. So I'm going to repeat it just so everybody else fully understands like I. So let's say you've been a working person all your life. You have some type of medical traumatic event that occurs and now you can't work. And it's been however long, let's say a year, and they've reached out to your company and now you've begun the process of filing for them. They've been out of work at least a year, not necessarily a year of working with you, but they've been out of work for a year. And they decide to go back and to seek employment. And let's say they're working part-time, not the full time that they were used to. And they're trying it because they need to
Mhm.
make ends meet. You can still continue on moving forward with this claim while they're trying to at least assess if they can try to go back to work.
Yeah.
So even if it's breaking them physically and emotionally, but they need to have some food on the table and they're working 15 hours a week or something like that, you're still going to move forward, because I would think in that case you're still proving that this person can no longer work to the level in which they were.
Right. Well, so if the person is earning over SGA, so they've gone back to work and they're earning over that magical SGA
Yeah.
figure Social Security determines, and it's over 1,470, then what we're saying is they were disabled until they started working and earning over SGA. Now,
Okay.
the great thing though, actually the great thing, but I'll say that
Well,
person goes
it's
back
all
and they
great.
work for 3 months
Yeah.
and then it doesn't work out and they're
Yeah.
back out. Now your case is actually so much stronger because now you've actually tried to go back to work. You were unsuccessful. As long as your work was less than 6 months, we can go with we're going to say that was called an unsuccessful work attempt. An
Okay.
unsuccessful work attempt is up to 6 months in time and it ended because of the disability. So we can write off that work. So now we're back to going for an ongoing decision. So when you were working, we're like, okay, guess what? You're over SGA. So we're going to keep this case going, but we're only going for a closed period because you've already proved to Social Security you're not disabled as of this point because you're earning more than what they say you can't earn.
Right.
So we're going, but then it doesn't work out. Now they're back out. Okay, now we're continuing that same case and we're going for an ongoing decision because we're going to say this was an unsuccessful work attempt, which makes you actually very credible before a judge, because sometimes we'll go into a case and the judge will say, have you tried to do anything? And if the person's like, yeah, I did. I tried to do this and I couldn't do it. It actually helps credibility. When you go before a judge, credibility is a huge factor in this. The believability of the individual, plays into it. Of course, the facts are on paper and that's what we're proving, but there is something to the judge recognizing this individual, and what's happened with them and what they're trying to do. And they don't want to be here. They don't want to be in this situation, but they are. And that,
okay. So even if they're
the
making over the amount, it can still be closed for the year in which they couldn't work. So there could be back pay, retro pay for that time period that they were unable to, and it actually doesn't look poor for them. But if they find that in the next, however time period it is that you're trying to move forward with this, that you got to go out again, you're saying it looks even better for them.
It does.
Okay.
It does. It doesn't hurt you, I guess is what I should say. Don't think like going back to work and then it not working out doesn't hurt you. It actually can help your claim.
Right. So one of the things I wanted to talk about also is a lot of times when we're going through this process, we're told to go see a psychologist because I think people don't realize that it's not just physical, it's also emotional. A lot of the people in this community and any other community can suffer post-traumatic stress. And so that's impacting them and their ability to go to work. It could be the medications they're taking, it's making them exhausted in their non-function, or they can no longer drive really during the day because they have to take sedating medications. And so their body's not, whatever the case is. They may ask you to go see a psychologist who's going to perform some type of cognitive testing. Scared me to death when it happened to me. I didn't know. I didn't call you guys to say, hey, they want me to do this and I don't want to do it. I'm comfortable with my own therapist. So I did it. And I thought for sure I failed because something happened that triggered a PTSD response in me. And, I lost it. And then I was told, no, you actually probably passed really well. So when that happens and they're asking you to see one of their own doctors, whether it's a primary care or what have you, how do we handle that?
So we would say to let us know, because we would want to make sure that it's necessary. Because they should really be only asking you to go see someone if you don't have the medical to support it already. So if you're already seeing a psychologist, they shouldn't be asking you to go see another one. It's really usually only used when you're missing medical that they think that they need. And then if they do need that, then we would just explain to you how that's going to work. And this is, they're going to set it up, and then we're going to go, and then we're going to get a copy of it and see what it says afterwards, to prepare the case based on what it is. But there are circumstances where we'll write back to Social Security saying that, why you shouldn't need this. They already have a doctor. So we really only want you going to one of their doctors if we have to, because you don't have that type of doctor already. So that's
I know
really what
so
we would
much
look
more
at.
now that I didn't know then. And it's just so crazy. It's like I'm having my own flashbacks into how I was feeling, having no knowledge. And I'm, again, just so thankful that you're here and you're able to share all of this, because again, I hear so many of these questions that go on, and I've taken all these notes of things I wanted to ask you. Okay. So when it comes to the things that people are filling out in these forms, and what the big question comes when you're filling them out, and it asks you, for instance, can you, how often, I think it asked me about how many naps I took or hours I sleep. And I would say, I just sleep a lot of days during the week. And also, no, like quantify. You need to be able to say, out of 7 days, I take a nap approximately 5 days at approximately this times during the day for this amount of hours. So that just blew my mind on how specific, but yet some questions don't be specific, be very general. So again, I would guess that your advice would be, tell us these questions, we'll help you come up with the answers based upon your situation.
What we say to everybody we work with is, look, Social Security is supposed to go through us for everything, but they're not going to, because they don't.
Right.
So anytime you get any form, or they call you about anything, call us, because we actually want to complete the forms with you. We want to go through them with you and ask, because we know what they're asking for, and why they're asking, because it's not, some people say, well, I really can't do much. I can only do like light work. Well, they don't know that light work actually has a definition of how many hours a day that you can stand on your feet and do this and that. And they just meant, I just meant light work. I didn't mean like, and actually, so you have to be careful with what you say, because you might say something is not what you actually mean. Social Security is going to misinterpret it. So as basic and as the questions may sound, there is a science behind them in terms of making sure that you answer them correctly. And really giving them a feel for what your condition is and what it's like for you. That's an activity of daily living, is when they're asking about your naps and, what are you able to do for chores, and, do you go to the grocery store? Because they really want to know, how is this condition that you have impacting your ability to do everything that you do on a daily basis?
All right, I have a really interesting question, and I'm not sure if it's morally or ethically not good. Okay, so let's say you're in that situation again, you need to get some cash, you have to have some money, but you're going through this process with you. So is there anything illegal or in poor form to say to your potential employer, or when they make you an offer, listen, I can only earn, what employer wouldn't want to be told, pay me less, but I can only earn this much because I do have a medical condition, and I'm in the process of a disability, right now, but I am able to work. I just can't work what I once did. I can do part-time, but I really cannot earn more than this. Does that sound bizarre to tell an employer?
No, and I don't think there's anything. It's not like anyone's going to go look in that, but I think you'd say, look, I know that I probably can't do much more than that. This is all that I can do.
Right.
I don't think there's any problem with that.
Okay.
Keeping yourself under it until you get a decision, and then deciding whether you potentially can earn more, and using those work incentives to your advantage. Because it's a big risk to go and do that, and then make yourself not eligible for disability, and not knowing if you're going to be successful doing it.
Exactly. So how much do people earn? That's always a big question too. I think people assume I'm not going to be able to live on it. Now, I'm definitely going to tell everybody it is not a lot of money. And again, I worked since I was 14, and I did make some money for a majority of the years of my life. But even at the end of the day, before taxes, before Part B, which, then I have a supplemental, and then there's prescription. There's so much. It's so confusing. But I will say one thing, that when you can get into the office of Social Security or talk to Medicare, I found everybody to be lovely. I feel like all you have to do is just say, I don't understand. And they actually will take the time to explain, this is what Part A and B and D and Z and what they all mean, or whatever. So how do people figure out what they would make?
Well, if you want to know, anybody at any time can go out and do this. You can go to Social Security's website, and you go to what's called My Account. And you create your own My Account And the first time you log in, you have to prove who you are. So the first time that you log in, you'll be creating a username and a password, and you'll be answering specific questions about yourself. They'll ask you 3 questions that they're getting from one of your credit reports. So they might ask you, do you have a 4-year car loan with, and they'll give you 5 choices. You want to get these questions right, because if you don't, then you're going to have to go to Social Security to get this set up. So make sure you get the questions right if you do this. That's the only time you have to do it is the first time, because you're just establishing that you really are this person. Then you're able to go into My Account. Now, My Account's actually a great tool for anybody, because you go in there and you can see all of your wages that you've had under Social Security since you started working. And it's always a good idea to go check and make sure nothing's missing, because if you were missing a year, it's probably a lot easier to find your W-2 from 2 years ago than it will be 20 years from now to say, oh my gosh, they missed my earnings back in 1908, 2008, and then try and find it. So I always think it's a good idea to go in, but it's also going to give you an estimate. What would your disability benefit if you became disabled right now? What's your retirement benefit estimated to be at retirement age? Once you're receiving, it's even better. You can change direct deposit information. You can request letters if you need it. You can see what they pay you every month. You can see the date of your payment. So a lot of great information out there on My Account. And so anybody can do that right now. Go in there and get that estimate. If you don't want to do that, you're not comfortable, figuring out the questions and going through that process, you can call Social Security and ask them to send you a benefit estimate statement, but it can take up to 6 weeks to get that. You could go into the office. They're busy. You might have to wait in line a little bit, and you could ask for an estimate. But really, it's going to be requesting it online, or requesting it by phone, or going in person, or just getting it yourself through My Account will give you it. On average, I can tell you, like, the general average Social Security disability benefit right now is around $2,100, $2,100 per month. It all depends on how much you've paid in. So the more you've paid in, the higher your benefit amount will be. The highest benefit out right now is around $3,100. That's like a person who made maximum earnings for depending on how old they are, the amount of years that they would need. So it could be anything depending upon your circumstance. Well, it couldn't be anything. It's not going to be more than like $3,100, $3,200, but it helps. And also Medicare, that's huge, right? Health insurance. There's no more important time to have health insurance than when you're disabled. And you do get Medicare 2 years after your date of entitlement to Social Security disability. So it's not automatic. It's 2 years from your date of entitlement. So what is your date of entitlement? Let's talk about that. We'll go trying to find you disabled as of your date of onset. So whatever that date might be, that date you no longer could work. From that date, Social Security says, yes, we agree with you. You were disabled on that date. You then have to wait 5 full calendar months for your date of entitlement. It's called the waiting period. So you have to wait 5 full calendar months before your first date of entitlement. That's the first month you're due a check. And then it's 2 years from that date when Medicare will start. So let's do an example. If your onset date is March 15th, your waiting period is going to be April, May, June, July, and August. In September is your date of entitlement. September is the first month you're due a check. And say it's September of 2023. In September of 2025 is when you become eligible for Medicare. Medicare has 2 parts, Part A and Part B. Part A is your hospital insurance, and it's free. There's no cost for that. Part B is doctor's insurance. There is a monthly cost. And then depending on if you had high income, it might even be a little bit more than the regular rate. And then there's also Part D, which is prescription coverage. You might find that you need a supplemental plan on top of that. We actually work with a company that there's no cost to this. They advise people on Medicare. They'll go through all of the plans that are out there for you, your specific condition, because there are certain plans that actually are more helpful for conditions. And that's just a free service that we offer to anyone that works for us. But there's companies out there that do that. And I definitely advise you that if you're getting Medicare, you want to talk to somebody to see if there's anything else that you should pick up for maybe what Medicare is not going to cover.
Right. And I think if you don't have a spouse or somebody else whose insurance you can be on, you can, I think in most states, right, still go through the marketplace to try to obtain, and they do it based on income, correct? I think.
Right. Yes.
As far as their pricing. So now one of the other things I don't think people realize is once you were awarded, and so even for me, when I was awarded at the, before we go into this question, when I went to the magistrate, which was back in the olden days when you met in person, so this was, a while back, gosh, I remember being so scared. There is a thing called the vocational expert. And the vocational expert decided to come on the phone and tell the judge that I was qualified to work as a TSA agent. I was qualified to, what was the other thing? I wasn't counting potato chips or pencils.
Security guard. Security guard's always in there.
Yeah, I think it may have been a security guard. I could have done customer service on the phone. At the time, I had some nerve damage from the surgery, so I couldn't even really lift my arm. And I remember immediately, I just broke into tears. And my poor attorney sitting next to me, she's trying to tell me, it's okay, it's okay. Like, he knows this is every day, of course.
Yeah.
And so what I love that he said is, he's like, okay, but is there a job that will let her take naps every day? Because she's taking naps 7 days a week. And the vocational guy's like, not in the United States. You can't take a nap in the middle of the day. So I was like, oh, that was a great question. That was great.
Yeah.
And there was something else too about how many times I had to see therapists, cardiac rehab, doctors, all kinds of stuff. What job's going to let me do that in the first year without wanting to fire me? Because I'm not entitled to have that kind of time off that was needed. So it was just, in one regard, it was so interesting to sit there. And in another, it was terrifying. Now, the wait to find out that I was approved, again, that took some time. But then there's also a wait before you get your check. So it was at least another 6 to 8 months before I finally got my check, which was massive because it was retroed.
Right.
But I also got 50% of that because my child was under 18 at the time of onset. So by the time all of this had happened, now he was, had just turned 18, but I still was entitled to that. So can you speak about that extra payment there if you have children?
So there's other people in your household that can be eligible for a benefit because you're receiving a Social Security benefit. So not just Social Security disability, it also applies to Social Security retirement. So they're children. If you have a child who's under the age of 18, they'll be eligible for 50% of your benefit amount. They will continue to receive benefits until they turn 18 or 19 if they're still in high school. So if they're still in high school while they're 18, they can keep going, and benefits stop when they graduate or turn 19, whichever's earlier. So that's a benefit to a child. There's a potential for a benefit for a spouse. If you have a spouse who is taking care of children under the age of 16 in the household, that spouse could be eligible for a benefit on your record, again, of 50%. An aged spouse, if you have a spouse who is 62 or older, they could be eligible for benefits on your record. If they're not entitled to their own Social Security benefit that's greater than 50%, they could be eligible as well. And so these are all of those, that original application. I said they're going to ask about marriages, they're going to ask about children. The reason why is they're looking for any other people in your household that may be eligible for a benefit if you become awarded. So yeah, so that can be a nice little benefit to the household too if you do have a child under the age of 18.
So one more thing I want to talk about before we check to see if we have questions, and that's SSI. So there's a whole other mess. So what qualifies you for SSDI versus the other one? If you can explain that and those processes.
All right, so SSI is Supplemental Security Income. It is not Social Security. It is administered by Social Security. That's why it's so confusing. The acronyms are similar, and Social Security is where you would go to get it. It is a disability program. It is the exact same medical decision as Social Security disability. But SSI is a needs-based program. It is a welfare program. It's for somebody who maybe never worked. They didn't pay in. It's not an insurance program. You didn't pay any premiums for SSI. It is for a person who has very low income and very low resources and is disabled. Social Security has to find them disabled, same exact medical decision, DDS, same person, same decision. To be eligible for SSI, though, you have to have very little in income and very little in resources, and how you live matters. Are you paying your rent or is someone paying the rent for you? So for SSI, the first thing they'll ask you is, do you have more than, if you're an individual, $2,000 in all bank accounts combined or anything that you could sell? And if you do, you're not eligible. So you actually have to have under 2,000. If you're married, you can have $3,000 with your husband in all bank accounts. So you can see it's very low. And then any income you have may make you ineligible for it. So it's and it's not a huge benefit amount. Actually, I'm trying to remember what it is this year. I want to say it's like $800 a month if you're eligible. But then that $800 is reduced for any income you might have is going to reduce that. So a lot of people, if they're eligible for Social Security, that makes you ineligible for SSI because the Social Security benefit is going to wipe out anything you'd be eligible for on SSI. SSI also children can be eligible for it. So a child that doesn't have any income or resources, if they're in a hospital, their parents' income would not be applicable to them unless they lived at home. So sometimes you'll see children because, again, it's not something you have to pay for. It's not like Social Security. If there's very low income, then they could be eligible for something. So it is a disability program it's for people with low income and low resources.
Okay. I always have to refresh that in my mind because you are right. It is confusing, the terminology of the letters. But then again, disability seems to have a ton of acronyms. So it blows my mind away. All right, I'm going to just check in real quick and see if we have any questions that's being asked tonight. Hello, everybody. Hello. Right.
Oh, what?
So SSD pay per month. And again, as you had said, it really depends. Okay, what we didn't talk about is the quarters and how you pay in. But again, you did mention that you can go to, I thought it was myssa.gov, but look up Social Security. But there's a couple other bizarre websites that come up on Google first. So make sure you're in that .gov website.
Yes.
To determine what you're actually eligible for. But how does that work with the paying in and per quarters and how they track it?
So to be eligible for Social Security disability, the first thing is you have to have worked into Social Security long enough based on your age. The younger you are, the less work you need to have. And when you're working, Social Security has a dollar amount that they call a quarter of coverage. It's really not a lot of money. Roughly this year, if you earn $6,000 or more, you've earned your maximum, which gives you your maximum of 4 quarters. How much you pay in though, so how much you're making will depend on what you're paid by Social Security. It's all based on how much you've paid in. The more money you've made, the more your benefit amount will be. But it's individualized to each individual based on exactly what you made. So I would suggest going to the Social Security's website and creating My Account, and that will tell you or give you an estimate right there what your benefit amount will be. But I would say on average, most people around $2,000. But again, that's just an average. It really depends on you and what you've paid in. It would not, because Social Security, you'd have to be paying into the United States Social Security program in order to be eligible. But I don't know if Australia has their own. There are certain countries that do have similar type programs. A lot of countries will have some type of Social Security program, but I'm actually not familiar with what Australia has.
It sounds like you're asking, you don't have the ability to have let's say a therapy session and you have some, so how do you get past that to be able to possibly? Okay.
Okay, so you don't have medical is basically what we're saying.
Well, you either have a psychologist or psychiatrist, and now we're doing them online. Social worker.
Social worker, right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, we would have somebody from social work would be able to help the person go through it. Or, a family member, if they trusted a family member to maybe answer the questions for them. If they're working with us, we could work with a family member to answer questions and do all the forms, and then they could just get the signatures from the individual. We do that with some people who it's just too difficult for them. So maybe the spouse is the one that takes the lead working with us, gathering all the medical and then going forward.
And I forgot to unmute my microphone, so Molly is reminding me that I have to unmute my microphone. Okay.
Oh, okay. So
Sorry
we're doing all this stuff.
Sorry about
okay.
that.
That happens sometimes.
All right. Michael Bailey says, how about grandparents taking care of grandchildren as a spouse benefit?
That's interesting.
That's a good question. Believe it or not, there is such a thing as a grandparent's benefit. However, I've never seen it paid. To be eligible as a grandparent, both parents of that grandchild must either be deceased or on Social Security disability themselves. So they have to have custody of the grandchild, supporting them, and both parents must either be deceased or on disability. And if they are, both parents are on Social Security disability or both parents are deceased, then yes, there is such a thing as a grandparent benefit. Otherwise, to be a parent, it has to be an adopted child, a natural child, or a potentially a stepchild. A stepchild, there's an extra step where you have to prove you're providing half the support in the 1 year prior to disability. So it is kind of tough to get the grandparents' benefits.
So let me ask you a question to that. If there's somebody who would biologically be a grandparent that has been receiving disability, spouse is working, but they end up for a variety of circumstances to ultimately adopt their grandchild. Now that child is their child.
Adopted is an adopted
Once
child.
that starts, they should then be able to let somebody know, and they'll start receiving a check if they're under 18, the equivalent of 50% of what they receive every month.
Correct.
And what if they didn't know that? Can they go and receive back from the moment they ended up getting the adoption?
I believe six months of retroactivity, I believe.
Okay.
So I think they can, I'm not positive, I'm pretty sure it's 6 months. So it's not, no, you need to let them know.
Right.
And it would be effective as of the date of the adoption.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. What happens after age 65 with SSD versus retirement?
That's a great question.
So what happens is Social Security, your disability benefit amount you're getting is the amount you'd get if you were at your full retirement age. So if I went out on disability today, my benefit amount is what I'd get if I were 67 today, because 67 is my full retirement age. So what would happen when I reach 67 is nothing. My benefit becomes retirement behind the scenes, purely so Congress can say what money is coming out of which trust fund, but no difference to me, no change whatsoever. My benefit just continues as normally. It's just renamed retirement versus disability. So you are already getting your full retirement benefit when you receive disability, if that makes sense.
Just change name. Okay.
Yeah, just a name change. That's it.
But wouldn't that change if you then decided you wanted to go back to work or try? Now you're not being calculated at all because now you're receiving your retirement benefit.
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
As soon as you hit retirement age, there is no limit to how much you can earn. You can earn an unlimited amount of money and receive all of your retirement checks.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Taking notes. Not that I'm going to do that, but it's important.
And also just to make sure, you mentioned 65. The retirement age now is based on your year of birth, and it can go up to as far as age 67. So most people today, it's 66 in like 2 months or 66 in 4 months, or so it's not 65 really for most people anymore.
Okay.
It's
now, what
later.
if you're on disability, your spouse ends up getting to retirement age, and then what if they pass? And now there's so many confusions about. Are you collecting their Social Security and your disability until you hit retirement, and then it's the higher of the two? Or is it automatically, even before your retirement age, just the higher of the two?
You will always be paid your own first. So when you are eligible for something, you're always paid your own first. So once you're on disability, you'll always get that. But say then your spouse passes away, you are eligible for a widow's or widower's benefit. And say it's more than what you're currently getting. You will get the more. But you get technically, you're going to get one check. It's going to be the higher amount, but technically you're getting your own plus the difference on as a widow or widower.
But if that's more than your own, then it's just the widow.
You're getting the more as a check, but technically behind the scenes, you're getting your own plus the difference to bring you up to the higher benefit amount.
Right. So it's never both, even if you're before retirement.
Right. You never get both. It's always, you're always just going to be paid whatever you get most on. You never can get two benefits. You're always just going to get the higher benefit you're eligible for.
Okay.
And if you were to take a widower or widow's benefit early, like that's, 62 or early, well, it would be 60 or 62, depending upon age. If you wait until your full retirement age to take it, it will be more. It'll be 100% of what your spouse was getting. If you take it early, it's a reduced rate. So lots of things to think about in those situations, and you want to get the facts. You'd want to go to Social Security and say, well, what am I eligible for now? Well, what would I be eligible for if I waited? And then you'd want to do and figure out your own situation of whether I should take it now or should I take it when I hit my full retirement age.
Or should I keep my thing and try to get under that SGA? And there's all these things to think about.
So many things to think about.
So many. Okay. Thank you.
And we want to thank Michael Bailey for both of those banger questions. John Brenny here says, am I required to go on Medicare once I'm eligible? I'm still on health insurance through my employer as a retiree.
No, nope, you don't have to. As long as you are covered by an employer group health plan, you could delay your Medicare and then pick it up at a later date without paying any additional amount. People who just decide not to take it, they're not covered by any employer group health plan. There's not a reason why they're not. And then they take it later, then they can pay a penalty to pick it up. But as long as you're covered under an employer group health plan, you would not have to take the Part B.
That I knew.
Let's see. What happens if SSD passes away? Does spouse get income?
Okay, so if you are on disability and you pass away, if your spouse could be eligible for, yes, it would depend on if they're eligible for their own benefit amount that's more, but they could be eligible for would be a widow or widower's benefit. And you're eligible for widow or widowers as early as age 60. If you yourself are disabled, so your spouse is disabled, there's potential they could get it as early as age 50. You have to be found disabled to get widow's benefits early. But again, it would depend on if they're entitled to their own more. If they were 60, they wouldn't be entitled to their own because they're not entitled to their own until 62. So they could get the widows until 60, and then their own became more. They could switch to their own, or they could stay on the widows and then switch at a later date. So yes, they definitely could be eligible. It's going to be just the regular old entitlement rules for a widow or widower, and that's based on age.
Okay.
And work, I should say. If you're working and you might be working and earning too much.
Okay. We're going to go for this question again. Raquel is asking, I need to be assessed and seen to be diagnosed with PTSD, but my anxiety stops me. So how can I overcome this part from a psychiatrist to fill out forms? And
Yeah,
I think
that's a tough one.
Family, right? Again, we're going
now because
family.
What Social Security would do in that situation is you don't have any medicals. They'd ask you to go see a doctor, and then you're saying you can't go see the doctor. That would be tough because somehow someone has to certify that you meet that definition of disability. So I don't know if there's some way to work with, somehow, some way a doctor would have to be able to assess you, because Social Security can't go without having the medical, without having somebody say what you have. There would be nothing to go on. So that's a tough one. That's a really difficult situation.
Well, and I wonder if seeing a therapist, because there's so many therapists now will see you in state using, I think it's called Doxy. They do it through like a Zoom. And if they're able to even diagnose you with, let's say, agoraphobia or some reason why you can't leave the house, that in itself, I don't know, but I would assume that that's an issue that could cause somebody to be disabled because they can't leave the home to take a job. But even if you have aortic disease, especially, I would highly encourage you to work with a therapist to be able to get out of the house, because you do need to have follow-up scans and some follow-up appointments, depending on your situation, that would be critical to you moving forward in your future. But I would think try to see if you can find a therapist that would work with you online as a starting point, because all of those notes, and look, every time you call your doctor, you send them a little note through your portal, it's all kept on your record, and all of that can be used to aid in your case. So anytime you're calling your doctor and you're full of anxiety, or you're having issues, or that night you think your blood pressure is too high and you're on the phone with them, don't think for a second that that's not getting relayed into notes and dictated to go back into your file, because they're putting everything in there. But again, I would probably look into a therapist in your state that can work with you virtually over the computer to kind of help manage this and start documenting what you're experiencing.
Okay.
I would think.
From the anonymous forums here, we have I have a question that is specific to my situation and occupation that I'd like to ask. This is time specific, as I have forms that need to be filled out by Monday. Can your offices give her a call or reach out?
So by, what is today? So
It's
yeah, I
Thursday
mean,
night.
absolutely.
I can get you this contact information for sure.
Yeah, if you have contact, we can have somebody reach out to you tomorrow. So yeah, if you want to send me the information, I can have somebody at our office reach out.
Okay, I'll make sure you get that for sure.
Right, and so this individual has filed for Social Security disability right now?
According to some of the other notes in here, approved for Social Security disability benefits. In addition, Prudential LDI that purchased through the company. Prudential uses another company called Allsup to help facilitate their clients in getting approval. As a result, they were approved pretty quickly. Some of the questions are things like Prudentials are requesting, and you had mentioned some of this earlier, like 9 months in advance, daily activities questionnaire, all my doctors to fill out a capacity questionnaire to determine whether or not I'm capable of working any jobs that will make enough money to cover the portion that they're paying me. If their department determines that I can work any job, not just my current occupation, then they will stop my benefit. You were covering some of the stuff in the beginning,
but actually so. This is it's not disability. This is long-term disability with Prudential. So we don't do that type of law. So my, in terms of answering, is they're looking to make sure you still meet the definition of disability for long-term disability. So that's their forms. you could potentially, I know I'm very familiar with Allsep, maybe Allsep would be willing to help you out with filling it out since you've already filled out similar forms for Social Security, which they have. But that wouldn't be something that we do because it's, again, it's long-term disability paperwork and dealing with Prudential, and that's not what we do.
Okay. Like I said, I'll make sure that you have this contact information this evening. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, that looks like it wraps up everything else as far as the chat so far.
Great. I got a question that came in over my phone. So an individual who had to stop working as of November 22. So it hasn't quite been a year, but again, another person similar to myself, worked all of their life, had a medical trauma that has just left them in a situation where they just really can't work. But just recently, like in the last week, has tried to go back very part-time, just a few hours. Did that just screw up everything in the waiting?
No.
I mean, because it hasn't been one full year. I mean, she's, used to working 40, 50, 60 hours a week.
Right.
And now is like, can I even just try 10 to 15? What should that person continue on this process or?
Well, if they're earning over SGA, then they can't file at this point because you do have to, because right now you've proven you haven't been disabled for 12 months. But say it doesn't work out. So I would say, try it. See, maybe you'll be successful. Right. If it doesn't work out and the period of time of you're attempting this is less than 6 months, we could still, when you decide to file, when you've stopped, we could go back to the original onset date and we would call this period of time an unsuccessful work attempt. So the key really is that SGA figure.
Even if they're over the SGA?
If they're over SGA now, we couldn't file now because they haven't been out for at least 12 months. We would have to, because you don't meet the definition right off the bat, it would be immediate denial.
Okay.
If it doesn't work out and that period of time that you're working right now ends up being less than 6 months, then we can go back to the original onset date, write off that work and go for a decision. So it's really, you haven't like messed anything up.
Right.
If it's not successful. If it's successful, great. But if it's not successful, then we can write it off as an unsuccessful work attempt as long as it's less than 6 months.
And if it's unsuccessful, hypothetically, if it's unsuccessful and you're going back through this process, and let's say they try again and they end up with a position that's less than the SGA, is that still, you're still just going to try to fill the gap? Or could it be an ongoing payment because it's not the potential of where they were at full time?
It can be ongoing. If they're not earning SGA, it can then be just a regular ongoing. A person could, in theory, be earning under SGA indefinitely on Social Security, getting your pay and getting your full Social Security check because you're not going over that threshold of which they say, if you can earn more than this, you don't meet our definition of disability, is basically what that SGA
it comes down to, if you're making less than SGA, even if it hasn't been a full year yet of being out of work, but they know that they can't because they have a physical issue, then they can still move forward with filing the paperwork and continue making the under SGA and then wait out this time frame of however long it's going to take, 2-3 years. But again, the person's over the age of 50, so it's probably in their favor at this point anyway. And when they are finally approved, they could then get their check plus the money because it's under SGA and they're over 50 and it's probably not going to be any issues.
Yeah. It can be difficult if you're just under SGA. That might give Social Security pause, like, could they work more? But if it's, we look at the circumstances, and in technically, yes, you absolutely can file as long as you're earning under SGA. We can go for a decision. You can work and still get an award.
Okay. All right. I'm just checking to see if I have anything else. And Josh, you let me know if you have anything else.
I think if I was going to ask a clarifying question, it would be how much you're allowed to earn, and does that depend on how much you're getting? Like, is there just a soft cap, like you can't earn more than $2,500 a month, or does that vary?
Well, the first time you go to work, you get 9 months where it doesn't matter what you earn. You can earn anything you want, and you get your full Social Security check. After the 9 months, the limit is whatever that substantial gainful activity figure is. This year, it's $1,470. So if you earn more than that, you're not due a check. You earn less than that, you are.
Okay. Thank you very much. I might have missed that. Thank you.
Which is pretty amazing because, I mean, you literally could try your hand at being a supervisor again and they're paying you $80,000 and you're still getting your disability check, and only to find that in 7 months, if you're like, this is just, I can't do this. And you've got the medical documentation to say, no, you can't do this. You don't owe anything back and you're still in the process and nothing's really changing.
Exactly.
That's such a confusing thing. People are just, I just want to shout this out to the world and just share this everywhere, because I think this is the part that makes it, this is the second half that makes it so scary. The first half that makes it scary is the documents. And again, unlike myself, because when I first started, it was coming right off of my employer. If you're hearing this, you can call this firm or another firm, because doing this on your own is just going to be so daunting. And I've been on the phone and I've talked with people that I've referred to your firm who tell me that you're just, everybody there is so patient and really helps explain the question and helps kind of listen to your answers. And you guys have just become well-versed in aortic disease, actually, because I'm hearing the compliments, you know, because it's a ever changing. I mean, things can change on a dime, and it's an unfortunate thing. I mean, I've seen things just change overnight for people, but to know that that this program really is there for you to tap into. You've paid into it, and it is there not to deter you. As you said, this is not, this is a program that you paid into. So that's what it comes down to. And it's just going through the proper channels to be able to tap into that and say, I need some help, and not to be scared, and to really just talk with you about your situation and have this dialogue. Well, if you need money, here's what you really can't, you know, don't make $1,459. But, you know, if you're making $1,200, $1,300, it's not going to be hideous, especially if you know, you're not, this is nowhere near what your potential was. And it's because you've constantly got to have the time off, going to the doctor, whatever the case may be. Have that dialogue with yourself or somebody else in your firm. And I think that people will realize it's nowhere near as daunting when you have specialists like people from Doherty, Cella, and Keane helping them out. So.
Okay, another question here. Michael says, my company will pay me up to age 65 long-term disability. I should work on SSD now. The insurance only lasts 6 months, so your company would help walk me through this process, right?
Correct. Yep, absolutely. We're very familiar with working with people who are receiving long-term disability benefits. A lot of our referrals come from the insurance industry, actually. So yeah, we definitely could talk to you and explain to you how the Social Security benefit will affect the LTD benefit as well.
And in my company, it was, you had to finish up the LTD and then you got to start going through the process. So there was no overlap. It was like one ended today, we start this. But I know we started, I think I started paperwork a little bit before, because I was still in the throes of going to doctors, but it was just unnerving. Like, LTD is about to end now. What do I do? And it's the part that's frustrating to me is it really shouldn't have to be so unnerving. It's just time consuming. And if you can have some patience and figure out all these things that you do have as options, then it's not necessarily as horrible.
Yeah, and you definitely would want to start it before the LTD ends, because you don't want to have a gap with no income.
Exactly.
Michael says, perfect, thank you. Okay, so here's just a comment here. FYI, I was filling out my paperwork for SSD when I dissected. How ironic. I didn't get that one because I didn't finish the paperwork. Right? I was like, is that right? And they said, yes, I did. It was due the next day. I couldn't get it done, so I was writing down my issues, and bam.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Right?
That's incredible. Yeah.
Holy
you know,
moly,
and
I'm glad you're okay.
There's another community member, and it's crazy, and that whose spouse has literally, at least the last year, if not longer, has not left a hospital and is being denied in the hospital bed, being denied. Rehab, come home for a day or two, have to be taken back. It has been constant. And I sit there and I just don't understand how it's possible to be denied when there's can't stand, just basically a shell, can't function. How does this happen? And I don't believe that they're working with anybody from your firm. And in a situation like that, where it's getting down to bare bones, like they're just not going to be able to eat soon. I mean, it's so bad. And they still are denying somebody who's, you know, feeding tubes, like losing, having amputations. Is there a way to expedite this process?
That doesn't sound right at all. Almost like, I think that's a situation where Social Security said they were going to get the medical and they haven't gotten all the medical. That's the only way it sounds like that person should be denied. And that would be a case where we would be on the phone like daily with that examiner. Have you worked on this case yet? You need to look at this case. It's just one of those things that you just gotta like be on them And then they have no reason to do, like, they don't have to listen to us at all, but we're just a pain, right? We just keep
I
calling.
like that.
That's really all you can do. Or you could try and get your congressperson or senator involved. They're called congressional inquiries, and they can reach out and try and get things to move along faster in a situation like that. Yeah, but it is unusual from what you're saying, like how severe this person is that they haven't been awarded.
So bad. And
yes.
there's stories like that. And then depending on, does it change the time frame depending on what state you live in, or is it pretty much? It does.
It does. Every state's different because you're whatever the backlog is of the state that you're in. So, you know, there's some terrible states are really slow. I can tell you Texas is really slow. Florida's pretty darn slow. All the states, nobody's fast right now. New Hampshire used to be, which is the state that I'm from, used to be a very quick state that has slowed down dramatically. So none of them are fast, but they do vary. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they do vary depending on where you live.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Joshua, is that it?
I believe so.
We are looking good. Barbara, thank you so much again, as always. I still always learn something every single time. Really appreciate it. We've got contact information for Doherty Cella Keane listed below, someplace on this screen. You can always reach out to Aortic Hope at info@aortichope.org if you have specific questions or you'd like me to get you in touch with Barbara Mountain or somebody else from the firm. Again, Barbara, thank you so much for being so informative. It's such easy to understand information about this process.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Please don't forget to click like, click subscribe, click the bell, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much.